Good to go. My name is Tobias Rees. I'm Director of the Transformations of the Human program at the Berggruen Institute. If I think about the Transformations of the Human program, then it's ultimately a structural intervention. What I mean by this is that there was a certain concept, a certain structure of the human as more than nature and other than machine, which led to a certain vocabulary of the human, art, culture, history, politics, and so on, and also to a certain infrastructure where you have a faculty of arts and a faculty of science and engineering. With a clear division of labor, the faculty of arts being concerned with things human and the faculty of science and engineering being concerned with the vast world of the non-human, we think that this particular formation has come to an end, it has reached a limit, and something new is beginning, where the philosophical and artistic questions were at home in the Faculty of Arts are now at home in fields that are not trained or equipped to address, to recognize or address these philosophical and artistic questions. The aim of our project was to offer precisely a platform where philosophy, art, and engineering or science can come together to collectively provide this new kind of skill set, these new kinds of vocabularies, these new kinds of possibilities of thinking and doing. There are many artist fellowships right now in the world, and almost all of these artist fellowships function in a very similar manner. The artists have ideas for a project that they would like to conduct. There's a selection committee that picks the most exciting ones, gives them the money, and lets them do their research or their art project. We decided that that's not at all what we would do. What we do is that we have this Transformations of the Human program, and we have a whole series of working groups. And in these working groups, they meet philosophers and engineers or scientists. We have conversations, and ideas for projects emerge in that context. Projects that the artist could not imagine or do alone without the philosophers or engineers. Projects that the engineers would probably not think about, wouldn't there be philosophers and artists? And projects that no philosopher would actually dream up, wouldn't it be for the conversations with the artists and the engineers? If we come to that point, we invite the artists to actually carry out this research project. It's almost art as a research, art as a kind of philosophical inquiry, but carried out in the genre of engineering, for example. And when it comes to that point, we have an artist fellow.
My name is Agnieszka Kurant. I'm a visual artist and I live and work in New York. In my practice, I collaborate with a lot of professionals from various domains: biologists, computer scientists, cartographers, economists, but also designers and sociologists. It was very novel and unique. Transformations of the Human program is trying to create dialogues between these disciplines. One of the things that has brought me to the realization that these disciplines have to be in a constant dialogue is this new branch of science called complexity science that analyzes complex systems and the phenomenon that I've been particularly interested in, which is collective intelligence. Collective intelligence is a phenomenon observed in slime mold, termite colonies, bacterial colonies, social movements, the internet, stock exchange. It's based on the emergence of novel forms that are created by the interactions of thousands or millions of agents or elements in a complex system. In my practice, I'm trying to employ collective intelligence to art making, and I developed what I consider to be a novel way of producing, evolving, growing artistic forms through crowdsourcing to both human and non-human agents. I started off by outsourcing my works to termite colonies. I gave isolated colonies of termites, each of them about 1 million or more specimen, particles of gold, colored sands, and broken crystals, And these colonies were fed for a couple of months, and they were building forms, they were building termite mounds that looked exactly like what they built as their own homes, but they had this unnatural vivid colors or sparkle from gold and crystal. So they look as forms that hover between nature and culture. They are between biological and synthetic. They are also products of an entire society. And I'm in particular interested in the questions of collective production of culture as opposed to individual production. In the history of culture, we can point out moments when very important monuments of culture were created, such as the Bible or the mythologies. These cultural products were actually not authored by a single individual, but they were produced collectively by entire societies or multitudes of unknown, anonymous authors. And today we can witness a transformation in the field of cultural production, and we can see how individual singular authorship is again slowly being replaced by more complex collective forms. The contemporary human is a multitude or assemblage of various agencies, from microbial to AI. When we think about how our mental health and our immune system are influenced by our microbiome, the whole concept of self collapses. On the other hand, we are constantly being hacked by corporations that use algorithms to analyze our decision making, and they influence the ways in which we make decisions, also how we make decisions collectively as societies. And when we think about the fact that this most important defining factor of what was the basis of human exceptionalism, our free will and our ability to make decisions based on our reason and our feelings. When we consider it in the light of these kinds of agencies that are influencing us constantly from within and from the outside, we realize that the category of the human with very fixed boundaries as an independent subject that is capable of decisions completely collapses. The problem that we're facing is that these technological advancements are happening sooner than we developed a vocabulary to describe what's happening, and sooner than we developed a methodology and a philosophical and ethical approach to respond to this new phenomena. I think that we're living in really frightening times and we're encountering a lot of horrors, but at the same time, they are very interesting times because the changes in technology and society are so rapid that we no longer have to wait 20 years to analyze what's happening, because we see these evolutions happening in front of our eyes.
Last take. Okay. My name is Anicka. I'm a conceptual artist and I'm based in New York. I think that I'm exploring certain limits that most people are uncomfortable with, but really not in any way to teach people about the senses that they should be a certain way, but that we've been conditioned to think through our senses, perhaps maybe in a very inaccurate way, because we as humans have a tendency to apply a lot of ideology behind our thinking and the way that we create our systems, even through our senses, that they are conditioned. For example, when we think about in the hierarchy of our senses, we think of vision and ocularity at the top, and vision is most traditionally associated with discovery, exploration, knowledge. Yet somehow it's been attached to this notion of masculinity and the qualities of masculinity, whereas with olfaction, we know very little of how it works. And so we've also then attributed to the feminine. because we've applied these qualities that it is mysterious, inscrutable, impossible to understand, therefore feminine. And so these are inaccurate characteristics, and yet that's how culturally we relate to these senses. And even when we're talking about the work that I do with bacteria and microbes, when you are presenting to an audience at the Guggenheim, to sort of have people rethink their relationship to hygiene and their discomfort around bacteria as seen as something quite negative. I want to highlight the beauty and the wonders and the absolute necessity of microbial life on this planet, and how we all are carrying the microbes inside of us. So then it forces me to question, like, what constitutes the self? If the self is comprised by a multitude of organisms, the human self, or the individual, I say in quotations, is not a singular entity. We are made up of trillions of other microorganisms. And so it's just inaccurate to think of ourselves as a singular self. And from a microbiological perspective, the human doesn't even really exist. And so the Anthropocene doesn't really exist. I mean, we live in a bacteriocene in that sense. And so that's been a very, it's been a huge concern and pursuit of mine to try to further think through the microbiome and how it impacts not just humans, but also how it's really running the show. I have to say that the human has sort of been obfuscated for a very long time. I've never actually directly addressed or represented the human in any real form. I've always been more attracted towards these other kind of microorganisms in those forms, or other kinds of biological entities. In the last couple of years, it's been increasingly difficult for me to ignore the impact of the human. And so then I started to really think about the role of the human throughout history, and the sort of philosophy and the mythology and the fictions that we've all embraced in the way that we were able to cooperate. But with each generation, with each new sort of epoch, we have to redefine ourselves. And I think that I feel a tremendous sense of urgency, because I believe that we don't have a lot of time, and I think we're really nearing the late stages of our evolutionary process. Right now is a very critical time to think about how to redefine ourselves and really take a swing at that definition, and I think that's really important.